Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to another glorious edition of Reconcilable Differences with Danny and Jane. And the Road Warriors were at it again this weekend as we traveled far and wide, or actually not so far and not so wide, really, but it's nice to get away with another Nebraska excursion. Little hiking, that was nice. Meeting some strangers, having some culinary delights, having a culinary undelight at the end of our little trip, but it's fun to get away. We doubled down. It was one overnight a couple of weeks ago, and it was two overnights this time. That's part of what we're going to talk about today, and just the different ways that hiking and traveling and experiencing vistas has affected us throughout our lives, and also give you a couple recommendations of things we've been watching of late that you may find very enjoyable and maybe peaceful and maybe something that we can all learn a lot from. Those are all things that are on the table this time around on Reconcilable Differences with Danny and Jane. It's part of our Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday, which is always brought to you by the fine people at Cinematic Visions. Go there for all of your video production and ways to promote your business. Just talk to Jeremy and help out. Listen to the advertisement you'll hear coming up, or visit the banner ad at DannyClinkscale.com. That'll take you right to his website. So it's always fun to be able to talk about Cinematic Visions, and it's always fun to talk to my bride as we express our reconcilable differences, even if she fights off a little cough as we talk on Reconcilable Differences with Danny and Jane right here on Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday. Cinematic Visions has been an affordable solution for professional media production in Kansas City since 2003, offering award-winning video production and creation, as well as a wide array of digital and social media management services. From planning, scripting, filming, editing, and post-production, to delivering your product to a watching world, Cinematic Visions will provide professional and affordable services for you and your business with the necessary return on investment to make it all worthwhile. Cinematic Visions' goal is to unlock the power of storytelling through video and a strong online presence for your company. Beyond the numbers, they want to inspire and evoke your clients to feel and act. Let my friends at Cinematic Visions embed your brand where it belongs, in your customers' minds. You can find them online at cinematicvisions.com or with a quick phone call at 816-600-6300. It's time now to get some great assistance on healthcare with Chad Beisel from no-nonsense-healthcareninja.com. And Chad, even your business's name would indicate that you have a real aggressive way and an important way to go after some health insurance for your clients.
What I've found out in the industry is just a lot of people are really confused. They don't know what plans are good, what their plans offer, how they cover. And so I've just taken the approach of being really educated on what options are available to clients and showing them all the options that are available and making sure they understand them so they can pick and choose what options are good for them.
And one thing that's really important, of course, is access to doctors and hospitals.
Absolutely. That's become a big issue for a lot of people. Some of the plans out there are going to restrict those clients to where they can and cannot go. So if you live just outside the Kansas City metro, some of the counties outside, you may not be able to go to some of the hospitals up here in the Kansas City area. So making sure that you have a plan that's got doctors and hospitals and places you want to go is really, really important today.
Learn more by visiting no-nonsense-healthcareninja.com and let Chad help you. I'm here with Tim Emerson, the owner of Emerson & Company. And Tim, give us an idea of the range of services that you provide from Emerson & Company.
At Emerson & Company, we do credit card processing, payroll services. We do bookkeeping, merchant accounts like point-of-sale systems.
What would you say differentiates you from other companies in the field, and what makes you special?
I think what makes us unique is that we're a small local business making regional decisions on companies. We create a profile for the business and then put it out to our different vendors in a very competitive environment and tailor those needs to the specific business, which usually ends up in a great fit or great result for the company.
And, of course, the idea is to save money, right?
Save money, and actually sometimes I'm surprised where actually a solution that may cost a little bit more ultimately does save money, but we're not conditioned to think like that sometimes.
Emerson & Company. Check them out at emerson-co.com or call them at 816-360-9092. Firsthand, I have enjoyed the benefits of the CBD products from Canaway. My back feels better and better these days, as a major part of my routine are the pain-relieving salve and the pure gold oil. And recently I had the pleasure of a treatment session using the Canaway CBD in conjunction with the Microlight 830 cold laser. The non-invasive treatment session worked wonders, and I could barely tell I was even being touched. TML 830 is the first 3B cold laser to get FDA approval, and in addition, the combination treatment with CBD is patent pending. The new smart laser is the only hands-free cold laser in the world and is used by athletic trainers, chiropractors, MDs, physical therapists, and veterinarians everywhere. You can learn more about all the great benefits from the complete line of Canaway CBD products by contacting my friend Sherry McCants at 515-208-6312. That's 515-208-6312 to get outstanding information about Canaway.
If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at danny@dannyclinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you.
Welcome back, and off we went again to discover the vagaries of the Midwest and tried to take a little bit different route as we went to Nebraska City, Nebraska. And one thing I talked about on my Monday podcast that really has struck me the last couple of times, and I don't think I even expressed this to you except for maybe 2 minutes at one point. When you travel through Kansas and Nebraska and Missouri and Iowa, as we did during this particular trip, I've really been struck by the fact that basically all you see everywhere is Native American heritage. The towns, the counties, the rivers, they're all named Nemaha and Potawatomi and everything else, and it really is probably a real lost part of our American history. Right now, we get to focus on things that we need to do better as far as relations between white America and African American community and Black Lives Matter. But one thing that has really been marginalized through history has been the history and now the almost irrelevance of Native American heritage, and they've done so much for our world, if only for the things that we celebrate as far as the names of our communities and the landmarks that we visit.
Yeah, it was a tremendous vacation, even though it was a couple of days, just getting away just to rejuvenate, having to do our Blurs days at home these days because of COVID. But you're right, the state parks, the streets, it's just kind of an unbelievable thing, and I think paying homage to Native Americans might be a really smart thing to consider.
Yeah, I think we should really do more of it, and I think that it has been something that hasn't been done, and even when we see things that are kind of negative, like the discussion about football teams and whether the things that we talk about as far as the heritage of peoples is concerned, just shining some kind of light on something that is really forgotten, to me, would be very important. But certainly we get to learn as we drive because of all these things, and maybe get some curiosity about a certain tribe or a certain incident. And we saw artwork, for instance, regarding it was an Arbor Fest, really a lot, because Nebraska City is the home of Arbor Day, and the Morton, who is I forget the initials for the patriarch of the family. The next generation person is the person who started Morton Salt. But we visited the mansion of this man, and it was a complicated thing. He's a very important person in this part of the world. He encouraged people to plant trees, and it's made for beautiful areas across the country. But he had a very checkered past as far as his relationship with slavery was concerned, and that was pointed out at the outset of our tour of the mansion. It's very important to do that. So what we see is the complicated history of our nation always. This is a very important man who did a lot of tremendous things for Nebraska and the Midwest, but he also did some very negative things in his life, and it's important that those be pointed out.
Yeah, he was a lobbyist. He started out trying to work in business, and then he became the editor of newspapers and eventually a lobbyist. I think it's J. Sterling Morton.
Yes, yeah, that's
I think
right.
That's right. And, pretty tough-ass guy, made a lot of money, and then I think he had 4 sons, and one of those started the Morton Salt Company, as you said, and so they built on this amazing house, the Arbor Lodge, and we just had a fabulous time, but you can't help but notice interestingly enough, they had this phenomenal artwork that was related to Native Americans, and yet he was definitely, on the wrong side of that conversation. But I have to say, what was so great about going to Nebraska City is, his money created fabulous landscapes throughout the town, and they have the Lead Center, which is a convention center that was built in the 90s, kind of looks like an old 1940s lodge, and so there's a lot of influx, still actually very busy, and then they have the wonderful apple orchard right across the street from the mansion, and that's for kiddos, and there's a winery for mom and dad. So there's a lot to do right in the downtown area, and there's fabulous old architecture downtown of old, phenomenal Victorian homes right off the square. It's a mixed bag, but we kind of enjoy that.
Right, and it's one of those other towns that I enjoy. It's about 7,000 people. It's the size where basically, as I wrote about in my book, I can get my bike out and I can pretty much discover what the whole town is about. Now, riding cobblestone streets on a bicycle isn't ideal, I will say that. So the second day, I just opted for the gym. I got my history lesson on the first day, but it was really a fascinating trip. But what was interesting is that everything is Arbor. There's an Arbor golf course. There's an Arbor gas station. There's an Arbor restaurant. There's Arbor this. There's Arbor that. And, of course, Arbor Day. And he basically urged that people plant up to 1 million trees. And, the Arbor Foundation is now obviously one that really tries to beautify a portion of the country. But the other aspect of these drives is the fact that what we realize is that yes, there are stretches, and we took 75 this time, which there are stretches of that are pretty stereotypical Kansas and Nebraska, kind of flat, but more of Kansas and Missouri and Iowa in these particular areas is bluffs and rolling hills and things like that. And I think the topography of the Midwest is probably for people who are from other areas and maybe drive through, probably a little bit surprising.
Yeah, we had a fabulous time right down the street from where we were staying. We also went to the Lewis and Clark Nature Center and had a fabulous hike towards the riverbed, which had beautiful overlook bluffs and options for moderate to light walking. I just broke my ankle 2 months ago, so I was excited just to be walking straight on anything. But we had a fantastic time, and they have a very interesting museum that, shows the route of Lewis and Clark, explains their history, some sad ending to, as anyone who knows about the history of Lewis and Clark, their life was an amazing one. And, what's really interesting is you think about what it would be like to go through even this territory the first time around, and it was difficult going. We just assume the Midwest is flat, but that's not the case.
No, it's not, and we've certainly found that out on Sunday when we went hiking in Wabaunsee State Park in Iowa, and they did describe the trail we took, which was a scenic Sunset Vista trail, and they described this as moderate, and it was kind of moderate until we reached the top, and then when it was time to descend, we actually had to turn around. I mean, it was too steep. Now, you're compromised still somewhat, but it was so we ended up probably doing 1.5 of the scenic trail, and it was supposed to be an hour hike. We hiked for at least an hour and a half, and I just find the phrase hiking so interesting. Really, you're walking. What turns it into a hike is if there's different topography. And this was very lovely through the trees and things like that. And just the simplest of pleasures is hiking. And so many people enjoy it. And it sounds so much better to say you went hiking than you went walking, but it's not really much of anything, but it's so nice. I mean, it's so wonderful.
Depends on the trail you go on. We didn't go, some of it was in the trees. Like where we were descending was more of the hike. My balance is off still a little bit, so I was more holding on. I don't think that might have been
when we turned around, I kind of had to push you up the hill.
It's like, I'm not that strong, but hey, I lasted an hour and a half, yes. Right? And he had to get the car for me at the bottom of the hill. But the point being is it was so peaceful, and
yes.
You could look at nature, you look at the birds, you can look at again, the vistas of the sky. We weren't there at sunset, but I can only imagine what that really is like. And what was interesting to me is how quiet the parks are. I found it kind of interesting that we were almost the only ones everywhere we went. And it's like there's, not that I want everyone to trail in there so we don't have our own, privacy, but if there ever was a time to get out and enjoy nature, there's no excuse. You can get out of your Blurs day and go hike.
Right, and it's like I said, it's such a simple thing, little towns, finding little restaurants, enjoying that type of thing. But I've always found it interesting that you talk about the sky of Kansas and that you love, we have a very nice view of the sunset where we live here in Shawnee, and you have lived in London and you lived in San Diego, for instance, 2 places, and in each case, those places really don't have the kind of thing of the open sky. Of course, in London, it's because the weather always sucks. But in San Diego, I've always found it curious. You said that the constant looking out over the ocean was almost a little bit off-putting for you because you grew up in Kansas.
Strange. It was like I was off balance in San Diego. Very strange. You don't really see the sun in the same way, in an open way, till you finally get to the beach. Or, I was hiking at
Torrey
Pines all the time. What was really weird is the sun was so strong. I'd get a headache all the time because the sun was so strong beating off the water, and that the lights, it was kind of strange. But when I come back to the Midwest, Emily, my sister, brings this up too because she's an equestrian, and so she's on her horse. Her favorite thing is to be able to look at the sky, because when you're in Kansas, the sky is all around you, but you're living in New York City, Boston, the sky doesn't feel all around you because partly it's the buildings or it's, really heavy trees that you can't see, like where you're from.
Right. I never saw the sunset, really, because there's so many trees. They're so tall. It's a rolling terrain, kind of, but very tall trees.
He grew up in Framingham.
Massachusetts. And, it was probably, when the sun would disappear behind the trees, it was probably at least an hour till sunset. And so you really didn't see the kind of spectacular. And I often, people who follow me on Facebook or Twitter, generally Facebook, I put them out there, I often post pictures of sunsets because we have so many glorious ones here in Kansas, and it is one of the real features that you can get for Kansas. One other thing about our weekend and our trip, at the end of the hike, I offered to go get the car, and because we were pretty worn out. I was about dead at the end of this hike, I'll tell you that. And so you just sat down on the grass. But what happened is a dog came running up and sat in your lap, and just a chance meeting with a family that was so appealing to you that you really want almost to find out a way to reach out to these people you met and had a mere 10-minute conversation with.
It was so odd. Yeah, we saw them when we were traveling back from the hike. We didn't go down the mountain, and they made it through, and they were with their young girl. And I saw them coming out because I was sort of sitting, I didn't realize, sitting on the ground. They probably wondered what happened to me. And I told her, I said, we just didn't make it on the steep decline because I had this broken ankle. And she goes, oh my gosh, I've had it. We started talking about phantom pains in your other ankle. So there was an immediate camaraderie. But they're out of Omaha. They live just outside of Omaha. And, I think maybe part of this is, we're all looking for connectivity. And we had a chance to, safe distance in this conversation. And we had a lot in common. They love to do small towns. They want to come to the Elms. So I was telling them all about our experiences there. And, they love animals, love dogs. And so there was kind of an instant thing, like we didn't want to stop the conversation. And you came to pick me up, and I was like, I wanted to get their card, but obviously nobody had a card on them when we were trailing around. But what was neat is what was really great is they had a really good attitude. I talked to some other people that had come down the hill, and they didn't have that same spark about them. So there was just something about they were inspired by those simple things. And I think that's what was fun.
And I think what has been illuminated during this time of COVID is that human connectivity is so important, and that you really like to communicate with people, and a new situation like this almost seems refreshing in that particular setting.
Yeah, maybe so. Partly, excuse me, sorry. Partly is, we are stuck at home so much, and we're doing working with the same people. Not that I don't love my friends here, but we have sort of like where everyone's being kind of careful, because who you see, we find maybe we're just, I don't know if it's conscious, but we're all kind of finding our own little pods. Everyone's talking about pods. So I have this little friend pod and my little business pods. If we meet, it's always usually in a safe distance area. And so there's a sense of concern. But I guess maybe in this sense, we're in a new environment. Everybody's been stuck in. And so that's what's even more special, to be able to go out right now and connect with people and find new friends.
And it wasn't on Zoom. God
help us all.
So it was a great weekend. I can highly recommend. Just seek out. We've talked about it. I wrote a book about it. Just it's if you feel stuck right now and you have felt, you don't have to do anything elaborate. These are 2-hour drives. Pick out a map, go online, find something that, really floats your boat. Maybe you're a kayaker, maybe you're whatever. Maybe you've done none of this, but to explore little places that are just different. Just being away from your home environment is so refreshing, and we like to do it, and we'll probably get into a pattern of doing it.
Well, what's funny is we also had some odd experiences, both at restaurants. Interestingly enough, that's the only. It just is the luck of the draw, right? Our first night in Nebraska City, we dared go into there was maybe 2 or 3 people in there, sit at a bar, and everyone working there didn't know COVID was going on, and they also didn't know we were actually their guests. So there wasn't a lot of, although the catfish was good, there wasn't a lot of smiling going on in that restaurant. There was some MO, they weren't supposed to smile as servers in there. So that was a little off-putting.
But then the second night, very congenial place. A family reunion was going on. Fried chicken was to be had, and which is one of your favorites, and they did a bang-up job at that. But then we concluded with a lunch that was not had outside the state park in Muncie, where we never got served, and we eventually had to leave and eat fast food. So it was a wide array of things.
Yeah, I called that the Whiskey a No-Go restaurant experience. Whiskey Springs that had almost just opened up not long ago, and it was
People
this
raved
giant
about
barn.
it, yeah.
We were sitting outside, and we were so excited. I was going to get my whiskey chicken salad, and you were going to get
curds,
cheese curds. An hour and 15 minutes later, still no food, and we
Right.
finally ended up not staying. So it was a no-go then. That doesn't mean it might be better another time, but they were clearly having some issues because other people were being served before us. I'm not sure they didn't like us.
We had a 3-hour drive ahead of us, so that was not ideal, to say the least. Upcoming, we'll give you a couple of tips on things we've been watching of late that is a different way to enjoy yourself and maybe learn something as well, as we continue on Reconcilable Differences with Danny and Jane.
More of Danny's Reasonably Irreverent podcast after this.
Most of us have experienced auto accidents, and it's no fun. And even less fun is trying to work on the insurance aspects afterwards and getting full value after an auto accident. I'm here with David Cowan from RecExpert.com. And David, you have an unusual and important niche for people after an auto accident.
We have a passion to teach car wreck clients what they deserve. Getting your car repaired only fixes the damage and the paint. Getting paid for your car's loss in value is called diminished value. Chances are you've never heard of this before because most people aren't looking out for you. We help people collect thousands to tens of thousands of dollars for their car's loss in value after the wreck.
And if somebody wants to come to you for that, what's the original assessment cost them?
We offer a free review of any insurance claim to see how we can help.
You can't beat that. Great expertise and assistance in getting full value after an auto accident from David Cowan. Visit RecExpert.com and learn more.
Hi, everybody. This is Matt Llewellyn from 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. I just want to thank everybody for supporting local restaurants during this time of uncertainty. 23rd Street Brewery is now open until this pandemic is over. And right now, more than anything, local restaurants need your help and support. Come on out and see us. 23rd Street Brewery is open now from 11:30 till 9 o'clock for dine-in and carry-out. And whatever we can do to help you out, maybe with your catering needs, too. I appreciate all the support, and thank you for continuing to shop local.
We're here with Joe Spiker, the CEO and president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you had a great year in 2019, a record year. 2020 comes, things are moving smoothly along, and then the coronavirus comes. But your company seemed to be very ready, very proactive, and very ready to serve your customers well.
Yeah, we adopted social distancing very early before the cities even put out the notices. And we started working from home. We are largely cloud-based as a company, so that transition was easy. Our technicians are wearing masks and gloves, and salespeople are not meeting with homeowners. We're doing everything digitally and doing everything we can to do our part to get over this as quickly as possible.
So for any needs that people have right now, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Well, you can always call us, 913-257-5426. But the best way is to go to eastonroofing.com, put your information in, and we'll give you a call.
Easton Roofing. Integrity matters. Let's spend a minute with Dr. Brad Woodle, who along with his wife, Dr. Christina Woodle, the owners of Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture, my home for chiropractic care. And first of all, just tell us about the wide range of services you offer.
Danny, we offer comprehensive chiropractic, acupuncture, physiotherapy, and rehab. We do a very thorough examination, x-rays on site as necessary, and we have a full rehabilitation department, so we can help out with exercises, stretches, different therapies for the complex, but also the very simple conditions we treat.
You have been deemed essential and have remained open all through this COVID-19 process. What are some of the things you've done to make sure that was the case?
From the very beginning, in March, we started to make sure that we were cleaning and sanitizing with EPA-registered sanitizing products. We also implemented masks way before the state required them. We implemented a parking lot waiting room, took out half of the chairs in our waiting room, and made sure to space out visits so we could appropriately meet, discuss, and also screen patients to make sure we were taking care of healthy people.
Find out more about Advanced Sports and Family Chiropractic and Acupuncture and how they can help you at asfca.com. If you'd like to join these and other great sponsors and market your business to a growing and engaged audience, contact us at Danny@DannyKlinkscale.com. Look forward to hearing from you. Welcome back to Reconcilable Differences with Danny and Jane, part of our Arts and Lifestyle Wednesday, sponsored by Cinematic Visions, presented by Cinematic Visions. We'll give you the formal title of that. And we settle down in the evenings after I take my therapeutic drive, and the dogs are fed and dinner is had for you, and dishes are done by me, usually for some kind of entertainment or fare. A lot of music we've done. We've talked about that on this podcast. But recently, a few days ago, we watched, which you had seen before and I had not, the documentary about Fred Rogers, which was called Won't You Be My Neighbor? And it was done in 2018 to absolute raves. Time magazine named it one of the top 10 films of the year. And it is just like Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers. Actually, it's a very quiet depiction of a man who cares deeply about children, who had a childhood that was not ideal of his own. It's not really gone into that deeply. In fact, I don't know if I got to know Fred Rogers that much better by watching this documentary, but what I know is that man, and he had no impact in my life until this day that I watched this documentary. I was 12 when the show started, so it wasn't going to be part of my childhood. I didn't like it as an adult when my children were young. We'd watch Thomas the Tank Engine or anything, but I wanted no part of Mr. Rogers. I thought it was sort of candy, and I feel now deprived that I should have immersed myself in that and let my children, because the messages that were being brought by the puppets and everything, the quietude of the whole thing, perfect for children, but really in this time that we live in that is so contentious and so much filled with turmoil, adults could really learn a lot from watching Fred Rogers and what he does. And watching this documentary I'm telling you what, can give you such a sense of peace amid all the turmoil that we have in our lives right now.
I'll tell you, the pivotal moment for me in that film is when, thank God they filmed this, when PBS asked Fred Rogers to go in front of Congress to try to save PBS and get the $20 million they needed to survive. And one of these tough-ass congressmen was
John Pastore from Rhode Island.
Yeah, was on the verge of trying to slam him down, and Fred
made a little speech.
Made a speech, but he also then recited a poem that he'd written really for kids about when you do something, when you know you've done something wrong and you want to turn it around, how do you right the wrong? Oh my God. It like the senator's face completely changed perspective. It's like he went back to his childhood about what what honesty and truth and decent human kindness just all of a sudden changed the whole thing. And then Senator says, "You got your $20 million."
That's all he said. He just paused and goes, "Well, looks like you got your $20 million."
And it's like, Fred, this was the thing that I was struck by, is that didn't matter who he was with. Even the gorilla, Coco the gorilla, saw the love in his eyes, could relate to what Fred is emanating from his whole being. And that's what he was trying to teach people. And he clearly, as they stated, he was looking for love himself that he never had as a child. And it just gets you, and it makes you think about what we're doing in society now and how much we need this kind of inspiration. And he was the one, and this goes back way further than but he was one of the ones in the 60s and 70s that were saying, watch what you do and what you share with your children and society, because it really does affect you. And TV really affects people. And now that's what everyone is relying on for their news. And look what's being...
Yeah, he went into TV because he didn't like it. And, that became his life's work. And he also dealt with very significant issues. Right when the show started, he did an episode that related to the assassination of Robert Kennedy, and a child was asked, "What is assassination?" And he eventually dealt with sexuality, and he had a character on the show who played the policeman, I believe, and he was gay, and then at first he said, we can't be public with this, but then eventually he embraced that. I mean, they did so many things that were so important, took a hiatus from the show, but then realized his work was so important with children, and to me, with adults. To me, that would be the great thing if there was a version of Fred Rogers now, because people watch these shows with their children. But in my case, watching this documentary, I felt like I was affected by it, that if I had been watching that with my children, it would have had a great impact on me.
I just have to say this because I just read this yesterday. Robert Redford just wrote a letter to the world about when he was a kid sitting on the floor on his stomach with his parents listening to Franklin Delano Roosevelt, then president. He said, "The one thing I remember is the president offering a calmness even in the midst of stormy weather that he was trying to emanate, so our entire country felt a sense of that they were all valued, and that there was a group concern that we're all in this together, and you matter no matter who you are." And that was also Fred Rogers' mantra. So where are the people like that who we could bring up into our political system? I know they're still there, but I think a lot of people are fearful because of what some of these positions have turned into.
Right. It's a very difficult and divisive time, and I don't know if there is any turning it around, but we can all hope, and literally just sitting down and watching a documentary can bring a sense of peace and tranquility. And there's no more tranquil person than Fred Rogers, that's for sure. But Won't You Be My Neighbor, available on Netflix, easy to access, from 2018. And now it really makes me want to see the movie with Tom Hanks, which I have not. By the way, Tom Hanks is a sixth cousin of Fred Rogers. So it's related very marginally by him. And, of course, he was nominated for an Academy Award for that. Last night we also watched the first episode of a documentary series about women who direct films. And this was all about the opening. So it was a whole bunch of scenes of the opening of films directed by women. And it was just fascinating. I think eventually we probably needed to move on to the next part. There were maybe too many openings for my liking, but it was fascinating to see the cinematography and the artistic development by women who were really rare in the ages that we were talking about as being female directors, and unheralded. Almost all of them I had never even heard of, but really an area that, as we said, deserves to be explored so greatly. Yeah,
it was interesting because Tilda Swinton was the narrator, and the whole goal of this particular segment was to focus on, their decision-making process in the opening shots. to bring you into the film and what techniques the women directors used. And what was so great about it was it's not about women. It's about film decision.
Right,
it has nothing to do. It has to do with, but the whole goal of this in the end is to go. There are masterpieces out there by these amazing women directors, and to share some of those highlights of the conscious decisions they made on their opening scenes alone. It was really interesting.
Really very interesting, and look for that on your channel listings, because it's going to be a series of them on PBS, so you can find that there. But for anybody who appreciates cinema and the craft of it and the idea behind it, because one thing that maybe some people would find off-putting or not, but Tilda Swinton does a great job of. It's sort of like the very first time I went to an art gallery, seriously, I saw a exhibit by the French Impressionist Chardin. And it was one of those where you wear headphones and they explain things to you and you learn. And, of course, I didn't know anything about art. I still don't, but I know what I like. But anyway, to have somebody help you out, which is what she's doing here. Look at the, person over on the right, and they're in soft focus and so on and so forth. Just really almost like going to cinema school or to a class in college. That's sort of what it was like.
Like close to the end they showed, because the whole purpose of this is women have been, not looked at seriously, and they still aren't. And that was the concern. And so they're trying to kind of separate that out and say, in the end, they're just great filmmakers. But it was really fascinating. One of them was close to the end. I think it was in the 90s, or maybe it was later than that. But a girl suddenly just answers her cell phone, and there's some trauma going on, probably with her brother, I think, on the other end. And the choice the filmmaker makes to show distortion, as if it's the distortion in her mind, is the camera is distorting that whole scene of her just on the phone, as if you're in her mind on the call about how she's, reacting to this terrible fear her brother is in. And we don't know.
Right.
We don't know yet what's unfolding. But you are immediately gripped. At the beginning, all you see is her just walking down the street with a cell phone. She gets a call, and then you're like in complete and utter terror with her, and you don't know what it is.
And you're drawn in, and so there you go. Things simple with little trips away, things to do in the evening at home to enrich our spirits at these difficult times. And it always enriches my spirit to discuss them with you, dear.
Thank you, Danny.
Not many differences today, reconcilable, but that's why we call it Reconcilable Differences.
We didn't talk about your driving. Oh, that's the next time.
The worst backseat driver in America sits across from me, but that's maybe an issue for another day. And Reconcilable Differences with Danny and Jane.
This podcast was made possible by our great sponsors. We hope you enjoyed the latest Danny Klingscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Come back soon for something fresh and new.